Hello, it's fun up here, isn't it? This slide represents our world today, which apparently is broken. Or so we're constantly told. We live in a world today where we see messages everywhere and everywhere we go, telling us that our environment, our infrastructure, the harm we're doing to ourselves even, and the injustices that we're living with are everywhere, and we all have a responsibility to do something about it. The waste, the packaging, the animal testing, the over-farming, the child labour, the sweatshops, the workers' rights, the overexposure, the endless list of things. My name is Jessica Leader. That's me before I had my hair cut off. And I'm part of the strategy and planning team at RocketMill. According to Marketing Week, brand purpose is one of the biggest items on the agenda for senior marketers in 2019. It's not a new item on the agenda, but at the moment it's one of the most important things. And it's really interesting to think about why. And because it's not new, it's interesting to think about how brands can stay ahead and have a meaningful place in the conversations that I just mentioned. So these three pictures here represent some of the biggest conversations that are happening in our society today. Obviously, I don't mean political conversations. It doesn't even touch the sides, but I'm talking about societal and environmental conversations. And we are all under pressure to contribute to the change that's needed. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some examples of what brands are doing about these, and then look at different ways that companies are structured around their purpose in order to contribute. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is our environment. Hands up if you've seen the Netflix series Plastic Ocean. Don't know if anyone, yeah, a few of us. So the World Economic Forum sadly tells us that by 2025, 6 years away, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish, which is really horrendous. And so to talk about that, I'm going to look at a group of retailers and companies that are looking to do something to change the situation. And that is supermarkets. In around 2012, the plastic bag charge came in. And according to The Independent, last year it was recorded that single-use plastic bag sales have fallen 86% since their introduction of the 5p charge, which is amazing. But there's so much more that supermarkets are doing. Greenpeace says they should be doing more. They should be cutting more, recycling more, introducing more, driving more. But all of that gets press. We see it and it leads to government change. So we start to think about where's the influence for that coming from. We see organisations like Greenpeace. They drive a massive voice in our society, which directly influences either what retailers do directly or indirectly through what government then mandates that they have to do. That makes us as consumers aware, but also as consumers we drive that cycle in the first place. By becoming aware, we start to develop our own thoughts and influence the conversation that happens at a higher level. The next one that I want to talk about is mental well-being. I used a touched up and untouched up picture of Cara Delevingne in my three-picture summary before, because obviously that has a massive influence on social anxiety and social falseness. But the company that I'm going to use to make an example of in this is Dove. I don't know if anyone remembers the Dove Sketch campaign, but it's one of many, many campaigns that Dove created in order to promote self-esteem in women. And when I first started seeing the Dove Real campaigns, the first one I saw was the women of all shapes and sizes and colours in their underwear all laughing about how great they felt. And actually I didn't believe that that was genuine. I thought it was Dove tapping into a conversation in order to sell more stuff. But actually, then I learned about this, which is the Dove movements for self-esteem. So I don't know if you know that Dove actually, for nearly 2 decades, has had a foundation which aims to promote self-esteem in girls and women as young as 13. And to this day, it's educated over 20 million and aims to educate over 20 million more in how to have a positive feeling on this. An amazing example of a brand actually standing for what it shows. It doesn't always come across in its advertising, but it really gives integrity to the brand. And the third example I'm going to talk about is animal cruelty, and that covers so many things, and we have so many conversations about this at the moment. Veganism, deforestation, animal testing, so many things. And actually, one brand that I particularly admire in this arena is Lush. It's rare now to go down a high street and not see a Lush. It's a very mainstream brand. And it was born in the 70s out of the belief that using animals to make or test products didn't have to be the way, and there should be a new way, which was to not use animals in testing or product creation. And actually, I don't know if many people know this, but the Body Shop's first mass-produced products used Lush because they couldn't supply demand enough, and Lush at that point wasn't a brand in its own right. And so from its very inception, that's what it was here to do, create products in that way. And I really admire it, and at the first, initially it was a challenger brand, and now it has brands that challenge it. Went into Superdrug, recently, and I was hit immediately with the hair care aisle. And at the front of me was a display of new brand shampoos, which had literally a tick list of all the things that they were not or that they were. No palm oil, no animal testing, no parabens, there was literally about 10 things. Now, they're challenger brands to what is now mainstream. And if I didn't know why those things were right or wrong, I would suddenly, as a consumer, be thinking, I need to understand these elements and why they're important, and that would help to give me a voice. There are different ways in the examples that I've given that brands integrate their voice and their purpose with their core business function. And I'm going to talk about 5, and it's not an official metric, it's my metric, and so it's not very scientific. It doesn't make it less valid. I don't know if anyone knows this picture, I doubt it, but this is an amazing company and the first in my 5. So this is an example of a company that was created because it had a purpose. The 2 kids somewhere in this picture are 2 brothers who, when they were 14, they were orphaned by the tsunami in 2004. Now, they're 2 London lads, and when they came back to London, they decided that they were really lucky because they had an infrastructure to support them as orphans. And what they wanted to do was create an infrastructure for other orphans who don't have that. So they made Gandhi's flip-flops. They returned to London after the tsunami without shoes, and they decided that they would create shoes for people that didn't have them in the world. So when they started, they didn't really have any sales, but nor did they have a story. They were just trying to flog stuff where stuff could already be bought. And actually, quite far into their journey, they realized that if they told their story, people cared. It was fascinating. And they became, after 4 years of existing, they became a challenger brand to the market owner Havaianas, and now they are one of the biggest outdoor clothing companies and adventure clothing companies that exists. The second level I want to talk about is companies who have a moral barometer. So these are companies who aren't founded on a purpose, but it lives through everything that they do. And a really lovely example of that is Levi's. Ever since they were created in the 70s, they've believed in originality and creativity. And as a result of that, they have a music foundation which provides access to youth who don't have access to music otherwise, in order for them to be able to express their individualism and their creativity. And this is something they continue to invest in. The third of the 5 levels is businesses which have a CSR program. Now, a CSR program is obviously a company which has a strategy in order to have positive change on the environment or the stakeholders of that business. So this is an example of Salesforce's CSR program. I don't know if you know, Salesforce has a 1-1-1 model, which means that 1% of its resources, efforts and time as a business go to salesforce.org as a foundation. Now, what I really like about this, as much as I don't like Mark Benioff, I really like the fact that they created a framework for other companies who don't know how to start a CSR program, and they gave them a pattern and a model to follow, and they teach other people how to do that. So they're really setting an example there. The fourth in the 5 layers is companies who use profit for purpose. This is Bill Gates. Now, since the creation of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, it's been the wealthiest foundation by level of endowment. So since it started, it's had $51.6 billion injected into it. And Bill's latest mission is to cure the world of malaria. And he's able to do that, although the business that he runs isn't driven around social purpose. The profits from that drive this social purpose. And the 5th and the last, to use Matt's language, they're the worst. These are what I'm calling the bandwagoners, the people who don't actually have any values or morals, but use an opportunity, like International Women's Day, for example, to suddenly have a voice and an opinion. Now, I haven't named or shamed any businesses here because that's not what I'm trying to do, so slap a tape over the mouth for that one. But I have had many meetings with clients who have really wanted to do a campaign, and I've had to convince them that having an opinion on, I don't know, women equality, female equality or something like that, doing a campaign around that is a terrible PR disaster waiting to happen when they have 1% of female SMT leaders, no supportive maternity pay, no female leadership programs or anything like that, and just avoid. So I'm not going to name any, but I will challenge you. Next month obviously is International Women's Day. Just keep an eye out as an example of how many campaigns you suddenly see popping up from brands that you had no idea cared about anything really. So that'll be interesting to see. So there's some examples. So there's lots of different ways that brands are using their company to drive their social purpose. And so with that in mind, I just want to leave with a few ways that brands can stand out. Actually, I'm just going to interject with a really quick, my boyfriend and I had a healthy evening debate the other day about the fact that I believe that brands and companies don't only exist for commercial value, and he thinks that's rubbish, and brands only exist for commercial value, pointed me to US fiduciary responsibility, etc., etc. But I do believe that brands can be created out of genuine good. So I'll leave that for a Friday night pub chat for you. But here are the 5 ways very quickly. So the first one is to be real, and you think that this goes without saying, but brands do still need to be reminded of this. Be a person. We exist in a world of people-first marketing. People want to connect with things. People want to have a way to let out their own beliefs and values. So be a person and don't hide. If you are an individual rather than a brand, what's your voice in the company? Travis, for example, starting our green initiative, brilliant. So how are you representing the brands of that company and of yourself and helping your employer to bring those into the lifeblood of your company? Second one is show your roots. I talked about Gandhi's flip-flops, but if you have a story to tell, tell it. We have so many things about storytelling in marketing, but as a brand, you should be doing that yourself. Do more than is expected. So I gave the example of supermarkets earlier. And there are loads of initiatives that I could list that different supermarkets are doing. But I want to pick out Iceland, who was the first company last year to say that they would use no plastic in their own brand goods, which is amazing. And they're the only company that hasn't subscribed to the government mandate because they want to do more than is required, more than the minimum. And that, for one, I've actually switched from I don't shop at Co-op because there's plastic on everything. And that makes me more attracted to brands who are doing more about that. The penultimate one is to be genuine, and this is about being perennial. In the same way that a dog isn't just for Christmas, values aren't just for when there's a peak retail opportunity. Don't do that. And the last one is to lead the way, as per the Iceland example that I just gave. And as consumers, that's what we expect these days. And so to be a brand who's ahead, meet what consumers want and do one of these things. So I would just end by saying that we can't, as marketeers, always control whether the reasons that brands have purpose is either to drive commercial value or to drive social change. But what we can do is we can ensure that we always encourage the brands that we work with to live and breathe their values and to be genuine in a human way. We've seen that the responsibility doesn't only sit with brands, it lies with individuals and for us, and we have the opportunity to bring that out and do something right. Thank you.